To make this Hello Kitty in a gingerbread dress, just follow our Hello Kitty pattern in a pink dress. One of the changes is that the skirt is shorter. Here we stopped at the 6th row, which has 54 single crochets, and then we added the scallops at the bottom. We also added what I call the cookie bow, a bow tie, a collar, and we also added all of these little decorations on her dress. We'll show you how to make all of these things in this video so that you can make this Hello Kitty Gingerbread Amigurumi. For this video, we'll be using about 17 white pom-poms, multicolored pom-poms, brown yarn, red yarn, white yarn, and green yarn. We're going to start the bow by making 8 chain stitches. We're going to make a slip knot, insert our hook, and then start making the chains. Once we've completed our 8 chains, we're ready to start with our first row. For row 1, we're going to start with a chain 1 and then 18 single crochets. We're going to start with making our first crochet in the first stitch, and we're going to add a stitch marker. And then we're going to move on to the next, and then the third, and the 4th crochet, the 5th single crochet, and then the 6th, and the 7th. And here we're going to put 3 single crochets and 1 stitch. So we have crochet number 8, crochet number 9, and then crochet number 10, all in this single stitch. Then we're going to move down and we're going to do crochet number 11, then crochet number 12, then number 13, number 14, number 15, number 16, number 17, and here in that last stitch we're going to get in our 18th single crochet. And now we're done with our first row. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and number 18. For row number 2, we're going to start with our increase. There's our first single crochet of the increase. We're going to put a stitch marker on there. Then we're going to complete our increase in that same stitch. Then we're going to do 6 single crochets. Now we're going to do 3 increases around this curve. And then 6 single crochets. And now we're going to end with the 2 increases. Let's count our crochets. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. For row number 3, we're going to start with an increase. We're going to put in our first single crochet, and then we're going to add that stitch marker into that first crochet. Then we're going to put in another crochet for our increase, and then we're going to do 8 single crochets. And now we're on crochet number 8, and next we're going to do this curve, which is an increase, a single crochet, and 2 increases. And now we just have the final increase at the end of the curve. And now we're moving on to 8 single crochets. And now with our last 3 stitches, we're going to do an increase, then a single crochet, and then we're going to end with an increase. This should give us 30 single crochets around. As counter crochets, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. For row number 4, we're going to start with an increase. We're going to start with our single crochet, and then we're going to put in our stitch marker. Then we're going to do another single crochet in that same stitch to finish our increase. And then we're going to do 10 single crochets. And now here we're going to finish our 10th single crochet. Around this curve, we're going to do an increase and a single crochet 2 times and then an increase. After finishing the last increase on this curve, we're going to move into 10 single crochets. After we complete our 10th single crochet, we should have 4 stitches left, and we're going to end with an increase and a single crochet, and we're going to do that sequence 2 times. And once we complete our final single crochet in the row, we're ready to count our crochets. Let's straighten this out. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, and number 36. And this was our last row, row number 4, and we're just going to finish off our bow. We're going to just cut off the end and just pull the yarn through. Then we're going to weave the ends through, and then we're going to work on the middle of our bow. Now we're going to outline the bow so it looks like a frosted cookie. We're going to get the same color that we used for the dress, and we're going to put it on the outside of our bow. We're going to insert our hook on the top stitch in the middle of the bow. And then we're going to hook on our yarn, pull it through, and we're going to start with the slip stitch. Oh yeah, and just make sure that you're on the front side of the bow. After the slip stitch, we're going to go into the next stitch and make a single crochet. We're going to continue making a single crochet in every stitch around the bow. And once we get to that final stitch, we've completed doing the outline on the bow. We're just going to cut the yarn off and pull it through so that it doesn't unravel. And to cover the gap, we're going to get our darning needle and thread it through the tail, And then we're going to take it and thread it through the next stitch on the outside stitch, and then we're going to go back into the previous stitch. This will look like a crochet stitch. And now we're going to hide the tail by weaving it through the top stitches of the bow. And now that we're done with hiding this tail, we're just going to cut it off. And we're also going to cut off the other loose tails, like this one in the middle here. With this tail on top, we'll hide this as well. So we're just going to get the darning needle again. And since this tail is so short, we're going to weave the needle in first through the stitches, and then we're going to take the tail and then thread it through the needle and then thread it through the stitches. Now we're ready to snip off that little tail, and we're done with the main part of the bow. And now we're just going to attach the middle of the bow. For the middle of the bow, we're going to start off by making a magic circle. Here I'm going to try and make the magic circle as small as possible. So I'm going to pull that end to shrink that circle. Then we're going to continue on with making 6 single crochets inside the circle. There's other methods to do this for fraying yarns, but we're just going to do it the traditional way, and hopefully it'll work out for us. So now we're done with our 6 single crochets, and we're going to pull that end, and hopefully, like a magic circle, it all comes together. Okay, and it did come together. It was a little bit difficult, but now we're ready to start on our next row. For row number 2, we're going to do a single crochet and an increase, and we're going to do this 3 times. So there's our single crochet to begin with. We're going to put a stitch marker there, and then in our next stitch we're going to do an increase. So there is our first single crochet for our increase, and then we're going to go back in that stitch for the second single crochet. Then we're going to do this same sequence 2 more times. And once we're done with our 9th single crochet, we're ready to finish off the middle of our bow. We're going to cut the ends, then we're just going to pull the yarn through, and this is the front side of the bow. Usually that's used, but I like the back side a little bit better, so I'm just going to finish off so that the back side looks like the front side. I'm going to take a darning needle. I'm going to put it on the tail from the middle of the yarn, and I'm going to just pull it through the middle so that it's on the other side now. And now it looks like it all blends in on this back side. Now we're going to take the tail end of our last crochet, and we're going to put that through the needle. Then we're going into the outside of the next stitch and then back through the previous stitch. So it kind of looks like a little stitch. And then we're just going to weave through the end, through the middle on that top row so that we hide the end. And once we're done with that, we're just going to cut the ends off on both of the tails so that we just have the middle for the bow. Now we're going to make an outline that's the same yarn that we used for the dress. We're going to insert our hook into the middle. We're going to grab our yarn and hook it over, and then we're going to start out with a slip stitch. So we're going to pull the yarn through and then make a slip stitch. And then we're going to start on our next stitch as a single crochet and continue to make single crochets in every stitch on the middle of the bow. Once we're done with our final crochet on our outline, we're just going to pull the yarn through, and then we're going to get our darning needle so that we can make one final fake looking stitch. So we're going to put that on the end of our yarn, and then we're going to go through the inside top of the next stitch. And then we're going to go back down into that previous stitch. And now we're done with the outline for the middle of the bow. I'm going to take the tail and I'm going to weave it on the top stitch so that the tails are on the opposite side of each other, which will allow us to tie it on the top of the bow. It looks like they may not be directly across from each other, so I'm going to go in one more stitch, and now it looks like they're across from each other, and we're finished with the middle of the bow. To assemble the bow, we have the middle of the bow and the main part. To begin, we're going to grab a pencil and place it in the middle of the bow. Then we're going to pinch both of the sides together. Once we have those securely together, we're going to remove the pencil. This is the hard part. You could put a rubber band around the bow so that you keep the shape. Otherwise, you have to pinch the bow while you're tying the middle around it. It gets a little bit difficult, but it is possible to do. But maybe use a rubber band or like a clip to keep the bow together in this shape. But as you can see, I'm struggling to do this, but once you get it tied on, it'll stay tied on. And then you just kind of shape the bow a little bit as you keep it tight in the back. And once you like the shape of your bow, you can just tie it in place in a knot. So here I'm going to tie it in a knot. And then we're just going to shape the bow up a little bit so that we make sure that it has that little, I guess, dent in the middle. And I like to keep the middle a little bit off-centered because that's how Hello Kitty's bow looks, with the upper portion of the bow slightly larger than the lower portion of the bow. And once we have the bow like the way we want it, we're basically finished and ready to decorate it and then place it on Hello Kitty. And now we're going to decorate our bow. We have these multicolored pom-poms, and these are supposed to look like little candy sprinkles. So we're just going to put them on the bow like they look like sprinkles. As we randomly place them on here, we're going to put them on both sides of the bow and the middle of the bow. So just have fun with it. Place them anywhere you'd like. And once we've finished placing them all, we're just going to glue them all down. Once we're finished with decorating the bow, we're going to sew it onto Hello Kitty's head. And now she has a cute red cookie bow. For the collar of Hello Kitty's dress, we can either use our yarn and make it look like icing, or we can actually make a collar. For this project, we're going to make a collar. I think it looks cuter too. For the collar, we're going to start by making a chain. We're going to make a slip knot, and then we're going to continue to make the 36 chains. Once we're finished making the 36 chains, we're going to move on to making our first row of crochets. We're going to start with the chain 1, and then we're going to make our first crochet in the next stitch, and then we're just going to continue making crochets until we reach 36 single crochets. And once we finish making our 36 single crochets, we're ready to move on to the next row. Now we're going to start making some scallops. We're going to start row number 2 with the chain 1, and we're going to turn our work over. For the next stitch, we're going to yarn over for a double crochet, but we're going to skip that first stitch and go into that second stitch. We're going to insert our hook and make that double crochet. Then we're going to make another double crochet. We're going to yarn over and go back into that same stitch to make a second double crochet in that same stitch. Then again, another double crochet in that same stitch. That makes 3. And now we're going to do one more double crochet in that same stitch, which makes 4 double crochets in one stitch. We're going to skip the next stitch, and in the following stitch we're going to make a slip stitch. Once we complete this slip stitch, we're finished with our first scallop. We're going to start a new scallop by yarning over, skipping a stitch, and in the following stitch we're going to make 4 double crochets. And once we complete our 4th double crochet in that stitch, we're going to skip the next stitch and then do a slip stitch into that following stitch. Once we complete the slip stitch, we're going to start another scallop by yarning over, skipping a stitch, and doing 4 double crochets in that single stitch. We're going to continue to follow the same pattern until we reach the end. We're on our final slip stitch of this row. And once we're done with that slip stitch, we're done with our collar. And now we're just going to finish it off. We're going to cut the tail end. And then we're going to pull the tail through. And now we're ready to make the icing edges of our collar. To make the icing on our collar, we're going to start at this corner, and we're going to get our hook, our white yarn, and we're going to start by making a slip stitch. Once we've secured our yarn with the slip stitch, we're going to make single crochets in every stitch around the collar. When we get in between the 2 scallops, instead of making a single crochet, we're going to make a slip stitch. And then we're just going to continue with making single crochets and then a slip stitch every time we come between the 2 scallops. We're going to continue the same pattern until we get to the end of our collar. Once we've made all of the single crochets and slip stitches around the collar, we just want to make sure we have a single crochet at this corner, since we started at the corner on the other side, and we just want to make sure that everything here is nice and evenly stitched with our icing. And now we're going to finish off our collar. Once we're done with the collar, we're ready to put it on Hello Kitty. We're going to wrap it around her neck with the split in the front. Then we're going to tie the tail ends of the collar together, and here I'm going to make a knot so that it doesn't come off or come loose. Once we're finished with making our knot, we just have to cut the ends, and then we're finished with attaching the collar. The bow tie is basically 4 rows of 8 single crochets. We're going to start by making a slip knot, and then we're going to continue to make 8 chains. After our 8th chain, we're going to do a chain 1, and then in that first stitch we're going to start with our first row of single crochets. Before we forget, let's add a stitch marker to our first crochet. Then we're going to continue making our single crochets until we make 8 of them. Once we finish the 8th crochet on the row, we're going to do a chain 1, turn our work, and we're going to start again on another row of 8 single crochets. And we're at our 8th crochet of our second row. We're going to chain 1, and then again start another row of 8 single crochets for row number 3. And once we complete our 8 single crochet of our third row, we're going to do a chain 1, and then we're going to turn our work and start our 4th row of 8 single crochets. And once we finished our last single crochet on our fourth row, we're ready to finish it off. We're going to get our scissors, cut the tail, and pull the yarn through. And now I'm going to get a darning needle and thread it through the tail. Once it's threaded, take the darning needle and thread it through the back of the bow on the top row. It should look like little upside down V's. Continue threading it through the top row until you reach the middle, which would be the fourth stitch. I'm also going to count from the other side to make sure that it'll be in the middle. Next, pull the yarn through and then make sure that the front of the bow is facing you. Then pinch the sides of the middle together and hold it and wrap the tail of the yarn around a few times. Now take the bow and fold it in half, then pull the tail end so it tightens up the middle. And once it's tight enough and that bow looks good, take the tail and then place it underneath one of the strands in the middle. This will hold all of the strands in the middle in place. Keep pulling this tail so that the middle is nice and tight. The last thing we have left is to hide this tail end. We're just going to get our darning needle, thread it through, and then weave it underneath the back side of the top V's. And once you reach the middle of the bow, just pull the yarn through and then tie the tail ends together and just make a knot so that it doesn't unravel. I think I pulled a little bit too much here, but then I'm just going to reshape the bow tie. And now we're done with making our bow tie. Next, we're going to take our bow tie and place it on the middle of the collar. It can either be glued on or sewed on. Once we have the bow firmly in place, we're ready to move on to our two buttons. Here we're going to use the red pom-poms. Just glue them right onto the dress and we're done with our buttons. For the icing on the skirt, we're going to start by adding these little pom-poms on the hole where all of the double crochets meet. We're just going to place it right on top, and we're going to do this on all of the scallops on our dress. To stick the pom-poms onto the dress, we're just going to dab a little bit of the fabric glue onto the hole of the dress and then just stick the pom-pom right onto it. It'll take a few minutes to dry, but just continue to add a pom-pom to each scallop of the dress. When all of the pom-poms are glued on, it should look something like this. I've also let them dry so that they don't come off when we add the yarn part of the icing. The icing can be put on many ways. I'm going to start it at the line where the scallops start. I'm going to go up one row from where the scallop line is, and then I'm going to go down. Before gluing it down, I'm going to check to see how it looks. Do I want this pattern or what kind of pattern I want the icing to look like? Once I figure out how I want the icing to go, I'm going to glue it on. I'm going to start with a dot of glue above the pom-pom, and I'm going to place the curve of the icing on that dot. Once I have that placed, I'm going to place another dot of glue over the next pom-pom. And again, I'm going to place the curve on that dot, the curve going downwards. So on that space between the two pom-poms, I'm going to put the curve upwards. I'm going to continue this same pattern around the dress. Before moving on to the next pom-pom, I'm going to allow the glue to set a little bit so that it will stay in place before moving it around for the next section. So here we are on the third scallop, and I'm going to place another dot of glue over the third pom-pom. Then again, I'm going to take the yarn and place the curve downwards towards the dot. I'm going to leave enough slack in the yarn so that the curve going upwards will automatically form between the two pom-poms. I'm going to continue to place the dots of glue over the pom-poms. and make a squiggle of icing around the dress. Here I'm just connecting the ends of the yarn together, and once it's finished, it should be one continuous squiggle going around the dress. And now that we've completed the icing around the dress, we're going to work on the icing on the sleeves. For the sleeve, we're going to start our icing right at the seam here. And like the dress, we're just going to go up and down, forming a squiggle on the ruffle of the sleeve. Now we're going to take our glue and make some dots along the ruffle of the sleeve. But because the ruffle of the sleeve is kind of small, I'm going to make these dots into the pattern that I want, and then I'm going to connect them all with a line of glue. This will give the yarn a larger surface to stick on. Now I'm going to take the yarn and start at that seam and just follow the line of glue. I'm going to shape it as best as I can on this glue so that it looks similar in pattern to the squiggle on the dress. And once I get the squiggle the way I like it, I'm just going to continue that same pattern all the way around the sleeve. When finished, the squiggle should look something like this, and you want to do it on both sides. And now we're finished with our Hello Kitty Gingerbread Amigurumi. Thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe.